Uh, I'm president of Collinwood Jewel Stage for YouTube. That's my buddy Gordon Dymowski. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to talk The Night of the Hunter, one of my favorite black and white movies. This is a classic. Robert Mitchum, who plays a preacher, in very loose terms. So, Alan, when did you first see this movie?
Oh, God. Television probably 30 or so years ago, but I watched it again today because I really needed a refresher course on it after you messaged me, and it was a good reason to, and it's a great movie. So,
Patrick?
I was probably in college. I had, seen stills from it and images like that, but a friend of mine, one of the guys who runs Wonderfest, was a huge fan of it, and would talk about it obsessively for a period. And so I very happily watched it, and it's mesmerizing. You're going to hear the word Brechtian a lot from me in this discussion. Yeah.
Gordon?
I first saw this in college as well. And it's one of those films that you kind of hear about. And but I think I'd seen it when it came out on VHS. Yep, I'm dating myself. And I really like how it's this great mix of styles. It's a little noir, a little bit of Southern Gothic, and quite surprisingly, a bit of fairy tale. And it all in that combination you wouldn't think it would work. That there would be a point where it would jar, but it works so it's so smooth.
The acting has so much to do with that, especially on the two ends of the age spectrum. The older characters have just a tremendous amount of verve and life and magnetism, and the performances of the kids are astonishing. I think the boy is good, but Pearl, for me, just breaks my heart. She can't walk on screen or sing or utter a word without tears welling up in my eyes. She's so great.
I thought Lawton did a really good job in imparting those kids with the awareness that they needed to have in terms of what was going on.
Yeah, I think it's a movie when you watch it, that when you see Robert Mitchum on screen as this super heel, it's like, and like you could tell the moment he comes on screen, this dude is bad to the bone. He's bad news. And rightfully, and I love the line later in the movie, he's no preacher either. And and she goes and gets the gun, the shotgun.
She's great.
Yeah. Lillian Gish is brilliant in this film, I think. I think she's out even more so than the others because she modulates the style. She modulates it really well. I think that everybody, as you were saying, Patrick, before, they're energized into this style. And the style is this close to being melodrama, this close. Because it is noir, because there's an expressionistic sort of feeling about the lighting and the long shadows and all of this things that's going on. But Lillian Gish she is the only adult to which those kids can throw their trust, because she understands, and she understands what the preacher is all about. She's immediately suspicious of him, and the whole idea of this movie is, for the longest time, it's only the children that understand that this guy is off. He's totally off. All the adults are enamored of him. They're taken in by him. They're seduced by him. The ultimate nightmare, kid's mother, it ends up with the guy. So it's like, it's a kid's nightmare. It really is, because kids oftentimes don't get believed about certain things, or they get discounted about certain things. So that perspective, I thought, is really powerful in this movie.
Lillian's opening narration talking about the gospel was really good too. Like, I really enjoyed that too. And I love how they reveal the dead body. They open the cellar, the basement cellar, and you just see the feet. You don't see the whole body. You don't see the whole body at first. You see the legs. It's a really cool, because the kids are just playing hide and go seek. You thinking, if no one's ever watched this movie, or whoever watches this hasn't watched this movie, it's like, oh, what are they going to find? They're just playing hide and go seek. It's harmless. And then you realize not so much. What did you guys think of that scene, Gordon?
I thought it was a really great, shocking opener. Because it starts with the kids in the Starfield, and Lillian Gish is telling them the story, and you think, oh, okay. You forget the title is Night of the Hunter. You think, okay, it's going to be sweet and kind, and the kids go to the barn, and boom, you're reminded that it's about childhood, but it's also it's a great metaphor for the movie, which is what happens when evil comes among kids. It's what happens when kids discover evil, basically.
Yeah.
Patrick?
The dreamlike quality of this, especially in the soundscape. We can talk about the visuals all the time, but the use of music and voices and hymns and things like that just has this organic sense of summer about it. And one of the things that I really love and admire about the movie is the dreamlike way it treats the savagery of nature, and part of that of humans in nature, and that this is yet another weird, hot, verdant quality. Is the death. It's a very organic movie in its own way. I mean, the image that just stays with me the longest is Shelley Winters Under the Water, where she's a very skinny lady, and and the use of music in that, and how the hymn comes in long before we cut away, and it just is this awakening of all of nature, and all of nature is beautiful and slightly nauseating all at the same time. And as you said, it's this coming of age thing where the kids are just accepting all of it, and it all has this weird inevitability, and death under the starfield. Never has the sacred and profane been more tightly knit, I think, in seamlessly than in the impressions I get from this movie.
Yeah, Alan.
Okay, starting with a specific scene where you see the legs with the stockings all messed up and the whole thing, so there's been a struggle, a death struggle there. It reminds me very much of the sort of jump scares that you get in noir films. I envisioned like Agnes Moorehead's shocked face, as the dead woman, almost. So that, using some of the stuff, and of course this film is considered partially noir, if the thread of noir runs through it, so that makes sense. In terms of the nature that you talked about, Patrick, it's interesting to me too. There's an irony in that you see the turtle and the frog and all that stuff while they're going down the river, and there's always sort of, we're taught that nighttime in nature can be a dangerous thing as well as a beautiful thing. As you were talking about, there's sort of a juxtaposition there, but it's not nature that's dangerous for the kids. It's actually the cover of darkness is protecting them in this case, where normally in a noir movie, you would think the night the guy's going to come out from behind the alley and all this other stuff is going to happen. In this case, it's protecting them from the preacher, and that, so there's an irony to that in terms of that form, I think. But it's incredibly impactful in a lot of different places in this movie. But that opening scene is definitely establishing that jump shock, if you will. Okay, we're not in bucolic heaven here. We're in something else, and here's what it is. So,
yeah. What did you guys think? Mentioned Shelley Winters, Patrick. What did you guys think of her in this movie?
Oh, she's astounding. She's really good. I mean, talking about a modulated performance. That she just with her face, because we think of her with voice, especially later in life, as being such a big mouth, and she uses her voice in often a very small way in this film, and just the way she goes from lust to disappointment to rechanneled religious semi-fanaticism and so on, and that none of these things can lead to anything good, and that's exactly what we get. And I forgot who I thought she looked like in this film. Oh, somebody I worked with. She reminded me of somebody, but there is something in the bone structure and the distribution of just the right kind of fat in the face and all of that that just has this quintessentially American look. She is, without being a gaunt kind of thing out of American Gothic, there is just this sense of pure, flawed Americanism to her, gone on the rails.
Yeah. Gordon?
Yeah, Shelley Winters has, I think, and she also has a very haggard look around her, about her. That in a sense of, her husband is basically a criminal who dies, early in the film. She's enraptured by this preacher who marries her, but when she tries to, consummate the marriage, he's like, don't go, go away. And so I think there's this kind of real sense of, you can sense that she wants something better, but she then at the same time realizes she can't have it. So there's this kind of sense of world weariness about her.
Alan?
Well, I think that I don't know if Winters was conscious of this. She probably was somewhat. That what happens in between frustration and fanaticism is quite an interesting turn. We're seeing it today in some instances. People's personal or political or social frustrations get channeled into a sort of a fanaticism sometimes, and it can be different kinds of fanaticism. Sometimes it's not fanaticism, sometimes it's healthy social whatever activity, whatever, but it can be turned into that sort of a psychological cancer. And I think that's what happens. And Winters is she's really good at exploring transitional things and responding to what is happening there as a mid-century actor studio kind of actress. I will say that later in life, she irritated the hell out of me. I realized that she was still actively using her talents as an actress, but there was something about her personally that became different about the way that her alchemy worked. And I didn't like it as well. But her earlier performances, some of them are absolutely devastating. So, and this one is pretty good. Pretty good.
Alan, can I ask you a question about that? Do you think that has to do with her, or do you think it has to do with the parts she was being offered and her playing up the personality on the outside to kind of secure that name? If this is the only echelon of casting she's going to get, she's going to play into that.
It's both, because because of the part she got later in life pissed her off.
I didn't know that.
A lot of them did, because of the way she was treated as an older, larger woman.
Yeah.
You get these stories about, hey, look, I've got 2 of these statues. Why do I have to audition for, that kind of stuff? And that stuff is happening to her. Those stories, I don't know how true the specifics of that story is, but those are the kind of that was kind of things that she was dealing with, particularly as she had been such a grand surprise as a young woman who was very attractive, almost beauty queen attractive as a young woman, but had this immense ability to again, alchemize the roles that she was given. And so she began getting these really good, meaty sort of roles, or at least as meaty as women were getting. But I think as she got older, I mean, she had pride in her work. I have no doubt of that. I think even when she was not offered the greatest of all roles, and some of them were not that great, but some were. Even later, it was uneven, I think, for her, and I don't think she was appreciated as much. And I think that just PO'd her, and I think that did sort of affect how she was viewed and what she was offered.
I'm thinking of the frustration that she showed on the Tonight Show with Oliver Reed, where she
Oh,
pours
God.
the drink on him.
Yes.
And how much must have been coming out at that moment.
Yeah, she was the first to do that to Oliver Reed, though, I must say.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I'm sure Oliver Reed was thinking, "Oh, she probably wants to do me, doesn't she?"
Well, something. Well,
because with Oliver Reed, I think that's foreplay to him is if you throw a drink on him.
And he was also a drunken misogynist. I mean, there's that.
It's the only way he stayed hydrated on the outside. It's the only way his skin stayed when
Just throw in your face.
In his face. Yeah.
Right. But yes, I think definitely that was probably a larger issue in her life. I'm sure she got it from the time she was first in the business all the way through, in one way or another. And I always got a sense of that. And sometimes I thought that she became less sympathetic in roles where maybe she should have been more sympathetic, or something was different. Something was different about what she was doing. So, but she was still, I mean, she still had brilliance in.
She would have made it later in life. She would have made a really interesting Falstaff.
Yes, and that certainly is not something. I mean, women have played Falstaff, obviously. Yeah. And yes, she would have actually. That probably would have been a role that she would have relished. Actually, something that she could have really sunk her teeth into and created something new for herself, which I think she would have appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I love about this movie the most, where you do see Shelley Winter's character like undergoing these changes really fast, it seems, especially once Robert Mitchum's character enters her life. The one thing I love the most about this, even though the boy and the young girl are swore to promise never to reveal where the money is, they never really lose their innocence in this movie. They're very aware, at least the boy is to a large degree, of he's even seen the preachers. Okay, I know you're no good. Like he's picking up on it, and I love how they have him hyper focused because he's remembering the promise he kept his dad to protect his sister.
Yeah.
There's something interesting in that because our culture now, especially, but over the past 30, 40 years, has so enshrined children, and that's a good thing. Be protected, of course. But one thing I used to always hear about, and you see in older depictions of culture, is talk about the resilience of children. That and this is, and of course it's all going to be individual, but this is a real tribute to that. These kids are enormously, part of it's just due to their innocence, but they really do maintain a lot of that, if not their innocence, their optimism, that okay, we can keep going, and I appreciate that a lot about the movie.
The whole ending scene is about that. I mean,
yes,
that's
they're not made out of glass.
No, and I mean it's expressed both in the situation and also in her, quoting to the camera at the during that whole thing. So
yeah, and I think it speaks volumes that that when the boy, he reacts to the death of the Reverend the same as he reacts to the death of his father. And it never feels like it feels more like he's reliving the trauma of his father than the cliche he sees the Reverend as a father.
Yeah.
Well, I think it speaks to the sensitivity of the child too. It's like he doesn't like that violence, whether it's against somebody who is, been violent to him, or whether it's somebody that's more innocent. He doesn't like it. That whole thing is bad juju, basically.
They have this wonderful sense of decency
Yeah.
that maintains itself against Reverend Mitchum in the movie, and it's just perfect.
Yeah. He's unstained by the experience with the Reverend. He has not become cynical. So
Yeah, I think I sort of compare it to a movie me and Butch had covered for our westerns, was the assassination of Jesse James, where we see Jesse James's wife as they're showing Jesse James's dead body, and it's on ice, and she's just like stop this, like has that look in her face. Great movie if anybody hasn't seen it. But with this movie, I love how the kids are just escaping the preacher. They say, "Hey, the money's down." The kid's like, "Oh, the money's down in the basement."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that whole concrete floor thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, and I love Robert Mitchum. I love how he plays this character. He's like, yeah, I'm not falling for her. Because he's nobody's fool. He doesn't try to like act foolish. Where you would see, like, if this were more aimed towards like a kids movie, you'd see maybe the villain be like dumbfounded, like, "Oh, I'll fall for your little trick." But
Yeah,
this
because when a movie titled Night of the Hunter, you think, yeah, I want to take my kids to see that. That's going to be fun for the whole family. Hey, look, Robert Mitchum's got his switchblade. But the great thing about
switchblade to a gunfight,
Yeah.
whatever. That was his downfall.
But I think the part of the reason why that scene works also is that with Mitchum throughout the movie, he never, to use a wrestling term, breaks kayfabe. We know he's a bastard, but he never says, "Oh, I'm not really a preacher." There's never that sense of
no. He keeps his story straight. He keeps his story straight, even though it's a story that the kids can see through instantaneously. He knows that certain people he can manipulate with it, so he sticks to it. He preserves the lie, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both great points.
He's also and this is part of the wonderful variety in the movie. He's also intentionally ridiculous a number of times, especially in the very human way that he experiences pain and the various yelps and yips that occur. And that's great. I mean, it's more than just comic relief. It's showing that this all takes place in a very real universe. This is not, for all of him appearing as this giant shadow and so on for the kids, he is incredibly human and messed up.
Yes.
In the right ways, not in a way that makes him lovable,
no.
but in a way that makes him properly ridiculous and makes the excess of evil look silly.
Yeah. He's cowardly about pain, and when anybody when Lillian Gish faces up to him, he's like, he puts it back on again, but it's like the first few seconds of it, it's like, wait, we're done,
So he didn't mean to interrupt, but he's basically, oh crap, I can't do that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, he's a bully, and he's going to terrorize people who are willing to be terrorized, and Lillian Gish is not.
Not. No.
And there you get a really nice message about faith, because in a lot of ways it's a very anti-religious movie in the way that this religious figure or this clown portrays himself as a religious figure, and he's just a schmuck. And then you see the incredible strength that it gives her, and the authenticity behind it.
Yeah, and it's great too, because there's this nice little there's a scene toward the end where he's singing that leaning song,
Mm-hmm.
and she's singing lean on Jesus, leaning on.
Yeah,
that's a great way to show he's he's a preacher by costume, but she's a true believer because she knows the full length of the song.
And yet they kind of unite in the song also, which is a really, boy, that gives you a lot to think about.
Yeah, because the harmony is actually very good. It's not dissonant, like you might have if it were like a horror scene or something like
And
that.
and that's a very Brecht thing, is to introduce something that has one very specific emotional life, and then introduce something that just runs completely counter to it, and yet they end up working together.
The alienation factor.
They have the V effect, the alienation effect. Yeah.
Anytime I watch that scene where he starts off with that song, it only made me ask one question about Robert Mitchum's character. How long has he been posing as this? Because he's probably picked up many Bibles and read them through, learned scriptures. You know what I mean? He's done his homework.
How much of it does he buy?
Yeah.
I think he's drunk a lot of his own Kool-Aid, and it shows up situationally.
Yeah.
What happens with certain people that are not necessarily very good people or nice people and maybe dangerous people is they believe the voice in their head is God, and it's really their voice. It's them.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
as a reason for doing. I mean, he's a serial killer, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm.
He is a serial killer.
He's going to be teaming up with Lee Greenwood to sell Bibles.
I was about to say, I think he just went to Catholic school because they'll work a number on anyone. He can speak from personal experience.
Hold your hands out. Yes.
I think Catholic school would have done a world of good for this guy, because those brothers would have just beat the shit out of him. They really would have, and we know this. And so would the nuns.
Oh.
Well, Gordon brought up a point about wrestling term never breaks kayfabe.
Mm-hmm.
There was a gentleman by the name of Jim Hellwig who was the Ultimate Warrior in wrestling. He literally changed his name to Ultimate Warrior and lived like his character in every way. Sometimes you'll meet wrestlers or who will become their gimmick in every way, and I look at Robert Mitchum's character in this movie. He became his gimmick, like not Mitchum literally, but the person he became.
Character, right?
Yeah, the character.
It is there is not a moment when he as an actor blinks in this. It spiritually. I mean, he is completely committed to this character, and the character is beautifully nuanced. You never quite know what like the whole thing in the burlesque theater, where he's leaning towards two or three reactions at once, and you see them all kind of flashing around in his mind, and yet there is a wonderful internal consistency, even if he's not aware, the character's not aware of it.
The style, sometimes when you first look at it, it makes you feel like the responses are contrived, but they're not really. It's just it's a stylistic. There's a stylized conflict going on, or a stylized thinking through, or whatever that's happening, because it is that noirish sort of thing going on with that touch of melodrama. And when I say melodrama, I mean legitimate melodrama, like the 19th century stuff. But yeah, once you get used to that, you still see the stuff going on behind the eyes, and you still see all of that happening. So
it is such a clear directorial voice that it makes me really sad there aren't more movies like this, and that it didn't create its own subgenre.
But apparently it was not well received, and that's why, like, Lawton wouldn't do another movie. I mean, he had co-directed, apparently Ghost co-directed a couple of other movies, but putting his own name on that opened him up to some vulnerabilities, and he didn't like that when it wasn't well received. And now, of course, it's considered a masterpiece. But
it's funny, if it had been made later, I think it would have been well received. If it had been made, a few years earlier in Germany, Weimar Germany, it would have been huge.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, in the 20s or early 30s or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Sometimes movies are plagued by timing. Like they're made a bit ahead of their time to a degree.
He was blending several styles in this, and beautifully.
Very confidently.
Yes, very much so. But it was the critical audience apparently wasn't ready for that blend at that particular
point. But one thing, and I'll say this in the film's favor, because I think part of the reason why it wasn't reviewed well back then. Most of your movie critics were just like reporters who needed something to do. It's like, okay, I want to earn some money. Yeah, go watch the movie and go see Night of the Hunter and write about that. And I can see for a mid 50s audience, it's a weird looking movie. Now we can appreciate it for what it is because it's very intentionally not a realistic movie. It is
Right.
meant to be very dreamlike. Because in theory, take away I'm sure that somebody read the script is thinking this is not going to work because you start with the kids in the sky, then you start with murder, then you've got this guy who's we're not sure if he's a real preacher or not, and then towards the end you break into like a literally an upriver trek, and then it's set in a whole different town. Now, in any other a bad director we would be mocking this film, but yet
Sure.
Lawton knows how to shift the mood. He knows
Exactly.
how to.
Transitions would be clunky and not believable. Yeah.
Yeah. What's you guys' favorite scene in this movie, Alan?
That the final showdown is my favorite scene. It is the catharsis of the movie, and it is brilliantly done. They never leave the style. At the same time, you get to see different facets of these characters all happening all within just a few moments' time. So that would be my favorite scene. Just the showdown.
Gordon.
I would say I would say that showdown as well. Although I kind of wish there had been a scene when the boy's father and Robert Mitchum were in the cell, and the boy's father asked, "Say, Reverend, do you like to watch gladiator movies?" I kind of wanted that scene.
Graves. Peter Graves.
Peter Graves, yes, Peter Graves.
Patrick.
I already talked. For me, I just get drunk on the images. You know, where you have the house and the farmhouse are starkly in black and white against the cyclorama. This is just pure theater. The use of shadow in the movie, and the because sometimes I watch the movie, it's just all about the visuals, and sometimes about the soundscape. This time it's about the visuals again, and I am consistently haunted by the Shelley Winters Under the Water and the use of music in that, and the you know, the weeds under the water and so on, and then she's finally at peace, you know, in this vehicle that's going to go nowhere.
It's very Shakespearean in a lot of ways. That whole
Totally Ophelia. Yeah. I love that, and then I always think about how do they shoot this. You know, how did she keep from, you know, more bubbles and things coming out of her? And it's very disciplined.
She was rehearsing for Poseidon Adventure, of course.
She was under the water, very skinny lady.
Yeah. My favorite scene is when Robert Mitchum's character pops up in the lady's house, and she says, "I'm gonna come through." She's holding a shotgun, and he reminds me of Michael Myers, and this is years before the character's ever invented. Many years before the character's ever invented. Robert Mitchum is just creepy as fuck in this movie.
He is, but like these guys, he's a coward. At the same time.
He is. That's what makes his character so much fun too. By the end, you're realizing this guy's a chicken shit, like in everything.
Bully, as you mentioned before. That's pretty much.
He's never been stood up. You get the sense he's never been stood up to before now, and it's bad enough that he's being stood up to, but they're by two kids who outwit him
and an old woman.
And an old woman, and the same people who were loving him at the end want him to hang.
Yes.
And I love at the end where you know, they're talking to a guy who I'm assuming is the hangman, who says, "Oh, I'm looking forward to this one."
Yes, that's the uncredited hangman.
Yeah.
Okay, who wins in a fight, Reverend Trask or the preacher from this movie? Preacher, sorry.
I think Reverend Trask. He at least believes.
If it's the original Trask, I think that the preacher wins. If it's Gregory Trask, it's a toss-up, man.
I'm going to go with Alan on this one because of all the Trasks, Gregory is the most like the preacher, because Reverend Trask is just kind of, you know, he's believer, he's a witch hunter, there's no way you can change his mind. Lamar is just kind of, oh, my dad's gone. I don't like the Collins family. He deserved to die in a parallel world. But Gregory Trask, again, he's, to use the wrestling term, Gregory Trask doesn't break kayfabe. He does that whole nice teacher, but he's so Gregory Trask and the Reverend. I'd like to see that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because of the chronology of the show, we don't really think of the fact that Lamar is truly a transitional Trask. He has qualities of both of them. And I'd like to think Jerry Lacey was aware of that. It was really more the writers. It's just a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also interesting too, because you could see how maybe the thinking in the Trask family went, because Reverend Trask was like, Collins, witches, evil, superstition, stop them. Lamar's like, okay, well, my dad disappeared. The Collins family is involved. I'm going to take him on directly. Gregory Trask is like, no. I saw what happened to my dad and my grandpa. I know they got money. I'm going to sneak my way in and basically corrupt from within.
Nice. I have no further questions, guys. Is there anything you want to add about the movie?
I just wanted to say that there is a connection there's a further connection between Dark Shadows and this movie in that our fine Burke Devlin was actually mentored by the preacher in this movie. I think they were in Thunder Road together.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Robert Mitchum.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You can find that movie on Tubi, I believe. It was on Tubi. Thunder Road. Great movie.
That's where
Does Thunder Road start with a screen door slamming and then a woman named Mary, her dress waves?
Not sure. I haven't seen it in a while.
It's a Bruce Springsteen reference, so I apologize.
The song Thunder Road. Yes, now I know.
Okay.
I know Rogers and Hart, but that's where it stops.
Rhino Rogers and Heartless from Death Trap.
Guys, Saturday night, I have a good movie suggestion. Let's do the original Cat People. What do you say?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sure.
If you hate Nastasia Kinski, go ahead.
10:30. All right. Links to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box.
You got a problem with Paul Schrader?
Link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows table come out is going to be in the description box. Link to Alan Gallant's Dark Shadows YouTube channel is going to be in the description box. Go check out Collinsport After Dark if you haven't already. Go subscribe to his channel. He's on Facebook if you want to. They're all. He's on Facebook if you want to reach him.
I'm on Facebook too.
Yeah, Gordon's on Facebook. At Twitter, Gordon Dymowski. At Twitter, at The Real McCray. At Collinwood on Twitter. Guys, have a great night and take care.
You too.
Bye.